Pete Rose is an all-time baseball legend. There have been many thousands of people who have played professional baseball. Pete Rose has the most hits out of all of them. He had I think about like 4,200. I think. Let's see. Total hits. Let's see. Yeah, 4,256 hits in his career. That's more than anyone else. But he is not in the Hall of Fame because in the 1980s he was caught betting on baseball games. That is a big no-no. Famously, there is a rule posted in every single clubhouse in Major League Baseball that you cannot bet on baseball games, and if you do, you will be declared permanently ineligible, which is banned from baseball for life. So he was caught doing that. He got banned for life. He is not in the Hall of Fame. He died earlier this week at the age of 83, and of course, that is going to reignite the perennial debate, which is, they were having this multiple times while he was alive. Should he be admitted to the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Despite
Absolutely.
the scandal.
Yes.
Why do you think so, Charlie?
All right, here we go. Okay, so Blake, first of all, understand that the context of when he was betting was way less scrutinized than it is today. Yes, it was illegal, but a lot of players had connections to gambling back then. And the severity of the ban on betting wasn't clearly as understood, and a lot of players and managers did it. Now, yes, it was wrong. It was against the rules, but it was not unique in the, let's say, the context of that era. Okay, that's number one. Number two, can we agree, Blake, he was... Go ahead.
We haven't explained why he was banned.
Yeah, we did. He was caught betting on baseball.
Yeah, Blake.
Well, I mean,
Blake literally just
fair. But I mean, we didn't really go into what it was. It wasn't just betting; it was betting on his own games. Like that was the real thing. Like while he was a manager, not just a player. So it wasn't just betting.
Right.
In
so
general.
let's let Charlie finish his whole bit.
Yeah, I have a whole like liturgy here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of people
that
have no background info. That's all.
Sure. So that's the second point, is that when he was investigated for gambling by both the federal government, MLB, and later ESPN, he was never found to be gambling against his team. He only ever was discovered to be gambling in favor. Now, to Blake's point, which is his best argument, is that Pete Rose would always lie about it. He said, I didn't gamble. And he's like, oh, maybe I gambled a little bit. He's like, then never gambled on the team. There was a lot of lying that Pete Rose did about it. That's indefensible. That's Blake's strongest argument. We need to so understand that Pete Rose never, ever bet on throwing a game, okay, that we know of. And by the way, we know this because Pete Rose, and this is important because there is not an instance where Pete Rose was never on the field where he was not the most hustle, like ridiculous, over-the-top player, right, Andrew? He was called Charlie Hustle for a reason. If this guy was ever throwing a game, show me an instance when Pete Rose ever threw a game, okay? This guy is the all-time hits leader in baseball. He is the most games ever played. And even Blake would agree objectively, like an unprecedented achievement in the sport, right? Like literally unprecedented. The records that he set were just remarkable. Impact on the game, as I mentioned, Charlie Hustle was, his name, and it wasn't like he was a player that was known to kind of like leave early or not put in the work, or he was someone that was kind of like a sloppy drunk that was constantly, making suspicious, let's just say, like at bats late in games, right? There's no evidence of that whatsoever, right? Andrew, do you understand what I'm detailing here? Where it wasn't as if that he had a reputation for being, like there was like a slip in his career where it was very obvious that he wasn't himself. He was always 10 out of 10, completely invested in the game. So, okay, finally, after Rose was banned from Major League Baseball, like banned completely, Rose has expressed remorse for his actions, and he sought to engage in every way possible to try to reconcile for it. And finally, this is very, very important, is the subjectivity of the punishment against Pete Rose is disgusting. The enforcement of Major League Baseball's gambling policy has always been inconsistent. And so the point that I want to get at here is that he objectively from his career deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. No doubt. He never bet in a way that impacted the game that we know of. In fact, I would make the argument, Blake thinks it's a silly argument, I think it's a good argument, that every single day you are betting on yourself in baseball. By showing up, you are betting on yourself. By definition, you are betting on yourself to get a better contract. You are betting on yourself to try and hit the bonuses to try to make the playoffs. Yes, this should not be legal to go to off-street betting and gambling. But if the evidence, Blake, was to say that he was hedging against himself to lose, totally get that. And finally, and I think most importantly, is that Pete Rose then became an advocate and a vocal advocate for changing all the issues and rules around gambling. So should he be in the Hall of Fame? The dude is 83 years old and now dead, actually. And the punishment is way worse than the crime. The Pete Rose changed the game, and his accomplishments in general, it could have been this amazing redemption arc of somebody that made a bunch of mistakes. He was remorseful for it. He sought reconciliation, and his impact on America's sport, America's pastime, was irrefutable. That is my case. That is my liturgy. Feel free to discuss.
I want to add two really important facts to the Pete Rose case, too, that no one ever talks about with Pete Rose. One, he voluntarily accepted the ban. So
I'll respond to that.
Nobody ever talks about he voluntarily accepted the ban. He brokered a deal with the MLB. The MLB at the time had an interim what do you call it? The commissioner. So the commissioner at the time was interim. After making the decision or accepting the voluntary response, the rules at the MLB were that he could reapply to get back into the MLB after it was like a year or 2 years or something like that. And the guy who was the interim commissioner that had just stepped up, he wasn't even going to be permanent, died 8 days after accepting Pete Rose's self-prescribed, anointed ban. So he's like accepted that he would be put on the ineligible list, step down, could reapply basically. The guy that was the commissioner. And so that added to absolute chaos and confusion and probably one of the most important points in maybe baseball American history.
So I guess I'll respond on a few points here. First of all, he did accept the ban, but it's not like he just accepted it out of the goodness of his heart. He was under investigation at the time, including for actual criminal behavior.
Yeah, but that was the deal, and baseball didn't actually formally recognize that he did anything wrong because he
because he agreed to accept a lifetime ban. So when we say there was not proof of him betting against his own team, that is substantially because Major League Baseball terminated its investigation because whatever they were going to find, Pete Rose apparently decided it's better to take a lifetime ban.
He didn't accept the lifetime ban. He accepted the ban and the rules of the MLB at the time.
Which is to be made permanently ineligible.
No, it's ineligible.
Blake
he can apply a year later.
I want to get... Blake is intellectually honest. Blake, do you think, looking at the track record of his reputation as Charlie Hustle, when he was a player, not a manager, do you think there's any instance where he would bet against himself? Is there any evidence that's the type of player he was? What I will say is he kept playing well after he was a good baseball player. The last few years of Pete Rose playing, he was an active detriment to his team. Now, what I would say on whether he would bet against himself, then, if he chooses not to bet on his team, that is already corrupting the integrity of the game, because if he chooses to bet on some games and not on others, then he's the manager. He can do things like he can manage his pitchers in a manner that makes them more likely to win some specific game he is betting on, but less likely to win in the long term, less likely to get into the playoffs, less likely to win a title. So he's already corroding the integrity of the game when he does that. The other thing I would contest is he didn't atone for what he did. After he was caught, after he accepted being ineligible, he spent almost 2 decades lying constantly, saying, I never bet on baseball. I never did it. I'm innocent. It was a setup or whatever. Like it was all a misunderstanding. Then in 2004, he comes out and basically because he's able to cash in with a book deal, he says, okay, I admit it. I bet on baseball. And then he still says, but I only bet while I was a manager, because this is part of his defense, was that it was ironclad, you cannot bet while you're a player. Yeah. But he said, I only bet while I was a manager. I never bet while I was a player. ESPN investigates it in 2015. That was a lie. Turns out he was betting as he was a player. He was doing it all of the time. And like on top of this, it's weird to me that people bring up like what a
great guy Pete Rose is. Pete Rose is a disgusting guy. He was, there's evidence that he was like sleeping with a girl when she was 14 years old.
I got that.
There's a huge drug user. He's like a piece of crap. And I guess I'll get banned from the city of Cincinnati for arguing this. And yeah, there's a lot of pro players who like are awful. But what I will say with Pete is he had a very long-term pattern of lying about this over and over and over. He gets caught. He has to face the consequences. And it's like, boo-hoo about this. He's not in the Hall of Fame. No, like he could have been a legend for his entire lifetime. All he had to do is not break the one rule that they have posted in your frickin' clubhouse, which is don't gamble on baseball. And the answer is, yeah, I think he probably did bet against his own team, and that he managed to prevent them discovering it because he got them to scuttle the investigation. And even if he didn't, the truth is he's probably covering something up, because that's why he cut a deal to have this investigation be terminated. And I don't know. I find it bizarre that people cape so much for Pete Rose. He's the hit king.
So
he'll always have that, but I think he disgraced himself.